While Dr. McDougall's program is intended to keep you well and help avoid the need for doctors and medication by teaching you about a healthy lifestyle, if you are currently ill or on prescribed medication...
Okay, we're back with Cliff and Connie Glockner on the banks of Bayou Lacombe, located down in the Big Branch Marsh. We're talking about the transplanting of grass and how the shell dredgers had basically buried the grassy areas under the sediment that they were discharging, right?
And that's
They
Right.
smothered the grasses out because they kept stirring up the bottom and the muddy water, and they couldn't get the sunlight that they needed. The water was too muddy. So basically what they did was smother them out.
Right, okay,
You
but
know?
it wasn't necessarily from sediment piling up
No,
on the grass,
no.
it was
It was the muddy,
denial of sunlight.
right,
Okay.
right.
somewhere at the point.
Right, exactly, yeah, well, the plankton needs the sunlight as well in order for them to generate and grow, because the plankton now is an aquatic life form,
Zooplankton.
zooplankton, yeah, it's not I'm not trying to say, a plant, right? Is it a plant or an
No,
animal?
that's an animal.
It's an animal, right?
Phytoplankton.
Is an animal.
Right, okay, but they both need the sunlight,
All of the sun.
right?
Everything needs sun.
And so the discharge from the shell dredgers was, I can remember flying over and seeing the
Plume.
plume of sediment just extending out for miles, literally.
Mhm.
And so why is the grass so important?
Because, like I said, it's the nurseries. It's for your juvenile shrimp, fish, crabs, everything. You know, your crabs molt in. They do their shedding in the grass beds. It's a nursery. It's habitat for the smaller juveniles. It's a place to hide and grow.
And of course, crabs in Louisiana, we're very fond of our soft shell crab. Can you explain that process? They go through in order to molt?
Well, that's how they grow. You know,
Right.
when they shed, you call it molt. We always call it shedding.
Shedding.
Because they shed their hard shell and they're soft, and it's cyclic. You know that they shed, then they're clear crab. You know they swell up and stretch out, and then they don't have much meat in them. And then as they eat over a period of time, they get fatter and fatter until they're real full. They go through a stage. We have clear crab, and when they start getting fat, it's a green crab. When they get really full, almost ready to shed, they're a ripe crab. And then a buster is when they're cracking open, and it'll be a matter of hours before they shed and become a soft crab.
And then they come out of the shell.
Come out of the shell, and then the cycle starts over.
And
again.
then don't they, I've heard they suck up water to expand themselves out.
Well,
That's fluid body fluids have in them.
Oh, I see, okay,
Yeah.
Shell.
I see. So in other words,
Calcium, they use the calcium in the water to reharden the shell. And these body fluids and stuff help form, push it out like
and this is typical of all crustaceans?
Yes.
most. Yeah.
Do shrimp do that?
Yes.
too?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And that's why it's important, because they not only mate and reproduce in the
females,
grasses,
yeah.
but they go through this
The
process in
only
the grass. It's
female-
not out in the lake.
Yeah, they do it in the lake too.
Well, they do.
Do it mostly in the grass beds,
I
so
see.
they need a place to hide. They are real vulnerable when they're in that soft stage.
Okay.
Now, they do it in the marshes. They do it out in the lake. They do it in the grass bed. They do it in the stumps in the wet. And in the marshes, in the south and all, they go up in these little shallows and stuff to get away from predators. Because they have no defense. Once they start shedding, that's it. They can't move.
Well, another part that's essential to the health and vitality of the lake. Of course, it's an estuarine system
Right.
because it's connected to the Gulf, but also the overflow and supply of fresh water into it. What would you say is the health of the marsh now? Has it improved since the shell dredging has stopped? And what relationship does the overflow from the Mississippi River play in that?
Mississippi River, if they flow it through right, if they flow it over wetlands to eat up some of these nutrients that are in the river. The river's got too many nutrients. It's killing the Gulf of Mexico.
Nutrients which are coming from
farmland, from crops, nutrients that run off of cities. Sewage is a nutrient.
Mhm.
You know, not just like petrochemical company produces fertilizers and stuff. All these fertilizers they put on golf courses, all the fertilizers you put on your crop that don't absorb by the soil, it runs out of the soil. Soil does not hold it. And that's what's wrong with artificial fertilizer. As natural fertilizers get absorbed, they don't. Artificial. And all that stays in the water column. And then if you put too much of those nutrients in Lake Pontchartrain, it's almost a landlocked system. And when the water warms up, those planktons I was telling you about, not the zoa, but the phytoplankton, explode. And some of the bad ones, which is blue-green algae, it takes over the system here. The blue-green algae is there all the time. It's found everywhere. But it's kept in check by nature holding the nutrients out of balance.
And in a natural river estuarine system before man levied the river,
It was flowing over wetland.
right?
And when you flow, it don't even have to be wetlands. It could be flowing over timberland.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hardwood forest. Plants absorb up that nutrients that was naturally in the river. But when the 30s came, the late 30s, and the artificial fertilizers came out, then the nutrients that was running off of farmland are getting more and more. Now, we'll just take, for instance, say on 10 acres of ground, they used 100 pounds of fertilizer. Just take a number, that's not right. You know? They used 100 pounds of fertilizer. And in 4 or 5 years, it went to 200 pounds. And then as time went on, it went to 500, 1,000 pounds. Because the ground was not being tilled under with the plants and stuff, and given time for the nutrients to get back into the ground naturally, they was replanting it and taking it out. And now all it is just a base with no nutrients in it. And they got to put the artificial fertilizers to it, or they can't grow anything anymore. Because the ground is totally depleted of organisms. All the little microorganisms that break down all this stuff are gone.
Well, I was told that, of course, with the opening of the Mississippi River Gulf outlet, the dredging of that big canal, plus the levying of the rivers.
That's another thing depleted the market, salt water.
Right. So there's been a lot more salt water coming in here in the last, 30 years than ever before. How has that affected the marsh?
It destroyed 175,000 acres of St. Bernard, and it's continuing to take more. I would think it's more like 250,000 now gone because of too much salt.
How about on the North Shore
The
here?
North Shore got a big hit. The western end of the lake, all the cypress began to die, and that's all contributed to the MRDO. And I don't care how much fresh water you put in the lake, that fresh water won't stay there when you need it.
How do you mean?
Because the only time this lake exchanges water is in the wintertime with the nor'westers that drop the tide low. When you come into late spring and summer, all the way to next November, You know, we
Mhm.
start from March to November. There is no exchange of water except you get more salt water.
Mhm.
The water doesn't drop. If you keep pushing salt into the system, it just keeps building because there's nothing to exchange the water no more. You have no dead low tides. The only time you exchange water. You see, most people think Lake Pontchartrain, I know it was polluted at one time, was a toilet. You can flush it. You heard the sound? They're saying it needs a good flushing. Well, river water doesn't flush it. You just add more nutrients and problems to the system because the salt water still stays in Lake Pontchartrain and the fresh water stays above it. It don't mix.
And salt water's heavier,
Right.
right? And it goes.
I argue with scientists and everything. They say this water mix. How many times I've argued with them. And
Now they finally agree.
Now they finally agree.
Mhm.
That's like when they turned the Bonnie Carrier loose.
Mhm.
And I told them where the water was going to go. Oh, the computer don't show that. I said, your computer's wrong. It went out in the lake about 1.5 miles, 2 miles and disappeared. They didn't know where it went. I said, I'll tell you where it went. It went straight north. And it's going to surface between Manchac and what we call the Lacombe. And that's where the water reappeared. Because the river water at that time of year is cold and it dives under the warmer water.
How, I don't remember, but people have told me that at one time there was a large cypress forest on the North Shore here.
Always
Not-
like,
Pardon?
North Shore always like it. Bayou Lacombe was all that. But nobody's going to remember that except my grandpa and my great-grandpa because it was all gone at the time.
Yeah, they cut them, I remember, but about where was it?
The
You
big
know, I mean,
cypress swamp was in the western end of the lake, Manchac.
yeah, well, Manchac but I mean, around here, was there,
Down here, the cypress was along the upper Bayou Lacombe.
I see, okay. So there wasn't great stands of it like in the Manchac swamp, okay.
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because I've been told there was a friend of mine that remembers seeing a ghost forest of cypress over here on the North Shore, and
The only ghost
no, I've
forest
never seen that.
that you might could say is a ghost forest is in St. Bernard Parish.
Yeah,
And
I've
that's
seen that.
when the sea level was 60 feet lower probably than it is now.
Yeah.
They had a forest of cypress all the way out in Point Chico and Dead Man Island. That's in L.Y. Bay, in Breton Sound.
Mhm.
All that was cypress out there. It's a buried forest out there. The roots are still there on Point Chico and Point Concord.
And that's almost Gulf now.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember back in the 60s, I helped my uncle build a camp outside of Empire. Used to take a good 10 minutes to get out to the Gulf through the Marsh. And by the 80s, the camp was 2 miles out in open water. You know, all that was lost.
What they can't understand, that Lake Pontchartrain runs normally a freshwater system in November, December, January, February, March. And then the system starts to change.
Mm-hmm.
It starts getting a little more salty, what we call brackish water, and it stays brackish all the way through May, June, July. And after July, it starts getting saltier. And then August, September, October is at its peak of high salinity. And then from there on, it's dropping back off again. That's the normal action of the lake. But what the MRGO did is magnify that 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Where plant life can't stabilize. In other words, the variance between fresh and salt is too great. It's not on the, yeah, it's not
It's not
on
a natural cycle.
Right.
The salt water came from because it's jerking you back and forth too fast, like a rocking chair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It goes up and down, up and down. And another thing the MRVA did was increase the amount of water that we had. In other words, the tide, the normal tide raised 2 or 3 inches above when it normally was.
So that didn't help plant
Now
life.
the plants get water over. They got to go up above that or die.
Do you think this marsh is stable, in danger now? Is it
It's not
recovering or
danger
what?
anymore, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you would get something catastrophic and you could hurt it, sure. If they had never shut the MRGO down, that threat remains. It's like
It's still deteriorating. It's still deteriorating.
Sure.
The only way to stop that is to stabilize it. And
The only way you stop it is shut the MRGO down. Because just like this year, 16 inches below normal rainfall, that's deteriorating the marsh. Last year we was below rainfall, that deteriorated the marsh. It gives the lake more salt.
Yeah, I was out a few weeks ago and, tasted it. It was very salty, much more salty than it should
and this
be
time
at
of
this
the
time
year,
of the
it
year.
should be fresh.
The
Right,
Corps of
exactly.
Engineer solution to the pollution is dilution.
Yeah,
That's the-
yeah.
People got to understand, everything you dump into a body of water, they say goes out with the tide. In 8 to 12 hours, that tide's coming right back again. Whatever you went out, came back with it. It don't go anywhere. It just back and forth, back and forth.
Well, I know Dr. Billy Wolverton, that was the senior research scientist over at NASA, and he developed an aquatic means of purification for space flight and hopefully use on Mars or the moon and so whatever. And he said the rainforests, of course, are the lungs of the planet, but he maintains that the wetlands, the marshes, are the kidneys of the planet. And that, that's what helps cleanse any pollution that is carried off by runoff, I remember when the Big Branch Marsh was under threat from a development over there on Cane Bayou.
And the whole thing is a matter of fact.
Right, I know. Well, that's what I want you to expound a little bit on. Exactly, do you remember the exact year that was a threat? I know it was in the early 90s.
Oh Lord, so much has happened. No, I don't remember the exact year.
But you were on the board at the Lake Pontchartrain Basin Foundation at the time.
I was on the board of the Lake Pontchartrain Basin Foundation.
Exact year what?
The year it was formed, from when it was formed,
Right.
And I think I've served every position there is, as a board member. St. Tammany Parish is the fastest growing community in the United States. And we just saw so many things disappearing and knew that if we didn't move quickly, that we wouldn't have St. Tammany Parish left. It would be just an extension of New Orleans. And I could not see concrete all over these natural wetlands, And this section, like from Slidell to Fontainebleau State Park in Big Branch, is the only thing, this little strip here is the only thing we had left. And the only way to save that is to get it in some sort of protection, under some kind of protection. So we started looking at different things. We didn't look at just a national wildlife refuge. We looked at parks. We looked at research facilities, trying to decide what was the best way to save this. And at the same time, let people continue to use it so that they can learn about it. Because my contention always was, if you don't know something, you can't love it. You know,
Amen.
and if you don't love something, then you're not going to put forth the effort to keep it, to save it, you know. So the best thing that we came up with was under U.S. Fish and Wildlife to make it a national wildlife refuge where it will be protected and it will remain a natural environment, but people can still go on it, still learn about it, and enjoy it, you know. Plus, at the same time, it's still doing its natural functions. It's still an estuary for the lake. It's still a natural cleanup for the pollution coming off from the development of the land. You know, this is, I would say, one of the most unique systems anywhere in the world. Within a mile and a half, you go from an open body of water to natural marshland, to swamps, to hardwoods, to pine savannas. I mean, with this much in a concentrated area, it's the perfect environment, you know. And it would have been a sin to sit here and watch it just get gobbled up by development, you know, to let all that turn to concrete and people have nowhere natural left to go. You know, I mean, it's a stress relief for people.
Okay.
Besides all of the other natural functions that it does. I mean, when you can go from the hustle and bustle of I-12 and 190 and in 2 minutes be in peace and tranquility, look, watching animals, birds, it's a bird paradise, you know. You're watching bald eagles come back. There's a new nest built not a mile from here, you know. There's 3 nests right in this area on the refuge of bald eagles. We hadn't seen bald eagles. I had never seen them
I hadn't either.
until I got older, you know.
Just two
recently.
years ago.
And
First bald eagle I ever saw in my life.
it's unreal how
Right
much
above
it's coming back.
my
You sit
life.
here,
Not to mention the osprey.
the
The
osprey,
osprey. And you know, we're sitting here now looking out and literally dozens of pelicans.
the
Brown
white
and
pelicans,
white.
the brown pelicans are back. Cliff was taking pictures of the brown pelicans sitting on the post right there in the yard yesterday. You know, you're just sitting here watching it steadily come back. The ducks had depleted. Now the ducks are coming back. It's just everything. It's beautiful to watch and see, you know. And when you can see that not 3 minutes from the hustle and bustle,
Right.
you know,
it makes it worthwhile.
it makes it worthwhile.
I know the
You know,
feeling.
people ride out here just for the serenity.
I'm afraid they're gonna take it all for granted though, and go back to the old ways.
Yeah, well, that's why it's important that the work that you all have done be documented and promulgated. Let people know, because like you say, if they're not aware of it, they're not going to appreciate it. They're not going to love it. And that, you know, when you love something, that creates motivation and activation. So, you know, that's what being an activist means. It doesn't mean that you're, you know, going out and breaking windows in some downtown shopping mall.
Nowhere.
You
That's
know, I
right.
mean,
The muskrat industry in Louisiana, they used to harvest 6 to 8 million muskrats in a season in Louisiana. That's a load of fur, huh? You know, like us, you're trapping, I remember, 7,200 in a season.
you personally.
Me and Connie, she used to help me skin and strap.
Oh, I know.
Catching 150, and some days we run as high as 223.
That wasn't just from around here, though. I mean,
Yeah.
Right here.
really, just from here.
Right here.
And there are none anymore. Or are they
yeah,
coming
they
back?
have muskrat, but that industry is gone. You
Yeah.
know, there's no more demand for muskrat. I wrote a paper on the benefits and everything of muskrat one time. It was not a scientific paper. It was an observation. And I think if you would start trapping them again the population probably built back up to what it once was. But without trapping, they don't have any pressure on them. They don't see the need to reproduce like they used to. That was one of the things I got to observe trapping and after trapping, and what made differences. You know, people say, well, you don't catch them, they'll just populate it, you know, and they'll die off, they'll overpopulate. Well, that's not true all the time. It's like the coyote. They had coyotes in the West, and not much of the other country knew what a coyote looked like east of the river. And then when they started poisoning coyotes and shooting coyotes in any kind of way in this God's world, trapping them, everything, trying to kill them out, the coyotes went to reproducing like mad. And now there's the coyote in the main forest. That's how far they widespread. They're everywhere in the world now.
I've seen them here.
Sure, they play coyote here. And along with that trapping and hunting and shooting and killing, we was making coyote village, the garbage cans, the farmland, you know, the cattle and the chickens and everything. And the coyotes just found an abundance of food and they exploded. You would leave them alone, they probably would drop off. Kill their food supply and you kill them.
And it's a balance.
It's just like the muskrat. Like I said, there's 6 to 8 million muskrats in the season. And then they put the nuclear in there. That was another devastating thing, hit the marshes. Muskrats will eat underneath, nuclear eating on top. Saltwater intrusion. Boy, you talk about these marshes went through hell, let me tell you, and back again.
And you can see them improving again, though? I mean, do you
Sure, you
see?
see, like, you know, the years as you have more natural weather, the marshes are back to almost normal. A lot of nut grass and everything. Here, not down in South Louisiana.
But even here, under these
Still said
abnormal, yeah,
That's
exactly.
Just like
When you get a heavy influx of this salt water in
they're
here,
under stress.
you see it start opening up.
Corps engineers don't know, they don't have very much time left. That storm's gonna come out of the east one day, and everything's gonna be gone.
Dragging their feet too long.
Including this. They just dragging their feet around, but they don't care. They just don't care.
So what do you think that they should do?
They need to save the only ridge left in St. Bernard Parish, and that's along Bayou Lacombe. And they need to put a control structure there, or set of locks. And these locks are open on a falling tide and closed on a raising tide. And that will create the marshes in St. Bernard Parish to have more fresh water, and the marshes in Lake Pontchartrain to start building up the fresh water here and go back to brackish marshes like we used to have, not salt marsh.
Well, haven't they tried to do some of these diversions from the river?
That's a Band-Aid on a huge show. This is $1 billion that's gonna get thrown away, and I'm gonna use the right word, it's pissed away. Let me tell you, when nature created all this, and all that settlement was coming down years ago, it created 2 acres of marshland and lost 1. And that's when it was doing 2 for 1. And that's how it built it. Now there's no more settlements coming down the river. I don't care. It's silk, but it's too light and it's too much velocity. It don't fall out. The settlements, the mouth of the river is gone. And nothing gets more fresh water and sediments than the mouth of the river.
And it's
And
disappearing.
it's gone. I can show you from 1973 to 1986, you wouldn't believe the land loss. And it's because there's too much velocity on the 2 finer sediments.
And that's
Because the sediments are blocked off. You run a ladder up the river of flood control structures to get towing up there and maintain a 10-foot channel. Those sediments can't get down in there. And then they held in check from going out over the land if you would get them down by the levee system.
Yeah.
You would have to just let them go off the continental shelf.
Which is what they're doing and causing dead zones now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
With all the nutrients.
So with everything that we've done to it, you know, we're going into a new millennium. Do you see any hope
With people.
Okay, it's January 6th, is that the correct? 7th, okay, January 7th, year 2000. We're in the Big Branch Marsh and National Wildlife Refuge talking with Ron Rouse, who is the newly elected president of a volunteer group called Friends of the Southeast Louisiana Wildlife Refuges. From here on in, we'll just call them Friends. Started construction in 1995, April of 1995, and due to a hurricane and several other circumstances, it is just now nearing completion. And Rob, tell us a little bit about the function and responsibilities of the Friends group.
Well, the Friends are a nonprofit corporation that was formed to help with the National Wildlife Refuges and do things that would not otherwise have been funded by the government. And we've worked Bayou Sauvage, Big Branch, all the Bogachito, all the different Louisiana. We're actually Friends of Louisiana Wildlife Refuges.
Oh, okay.
There is a Southeast Louisiana. But we work with all of those refuges.
Uh-huh. And what are some of the accomplishments that you can point to?
Well, the Junior Refuge Manager Program in Bayou Sauvage has been tremendously popular. Children from all over New Orleans and the North Shore as well, coming out and learning about the life in the brackish water there in Bayou Sauvage. That's been very popular in New Orleans schools and on the North Shore.
So the educational factor is particularly big, and is that what the Friends group is particularly interested in?
Yes, we like to push the education, and we're very much interested in that. We're also very interested in getting public access to this refuge. You have to see it in order to appreciate it. We like to get people out to see it, learn what's here, and how much it's worth protecting, how precious these refuges really are.
And how long is this boardwalk? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It kind of winds out through here, and speaking of Doug Hunt, the Fish and Wildlife Service project manager, he's not dead sure, but it's about 1,000 feet.
Okay. And we're completing the observation deck at the end of the boardwalk that overlooks how would you describe this habitat?
This marsh in here is occupied, provides food for the ducks, for the other wading birds, as well as just today we've seen an eagle. Just all sorts of wildlife in here, all sorts of the birds, the deer in here also, some on one of the pigs.
Let me get around.
Okay, well, let me. All right. Doug Hunt is the resident ranger. Tell me a little bit about your your background and what some of the things that we're trying to achieve here as part of the Big Branch Marsh National Wildlife Refuge.
Okay, my background is I've raised in Pennsylvania, got a degree from Penn State, worked for the National Park Service for about 10 years, both in Alaska and Mississippi, and then
A degree in what?
recreation and parks.
Oh, okay.
And came here at Southeast Louisiana Refuges near about 5 years ago, 95, spring of 95. What we're doing on the refuge is really just giving people access to what has in the past mostly been private hunting land, private property. A lot of the different access is for hunters, is for other folks too as well, birders, folks bicycling, hiking, as well as kids with the student education program. Different things that need to be built for access, things like boardwalks, roads, piers, whatever.
Okay, and boat launches would be included in
Exactly, yeah. We got boat launches. One being built today, as a matter of fact.
that? Oh, yeah. Where, over on Lake
On Lake
Road?
Road, yeah.
Yeah, I saw the
Or the
film.
starts of it, yeah, getting the
film
fill
stuff, yeah. I would like to originate some programs on art, like to bring some people, kids, senior citizens, since this is wheelchair accessible, to go into some of the nursing homes and to bring people out here just to sit,
Yeah.
just to listen, you know, just to observe, but also for the ones that are more talented or desire to maybe try their hand at doing a little painting or something, you know, maybe even photography. But is that part of the overall scheme as to
Sure,
how to
yeah,
use-
recreation, you know, how to enjoy the nature in any way, you know, whether it's consumptive uses by hunters and fishermen or just folks coming out enjoying it however it would be, which could be just biking or hiking, or it could be painting
Canoeing, of
Birding,
course. Yeah, I
canoeing,
know
right.
that
Right.
we've been on several canoe trips. If they come by themselves, is there any plans for interpretive areas that, you know?
Yeah, there is. As a matter of fact, there's a brochure being to be printed up shortly. I know it's been through a couple forms of drafts. I haven't seen the final copy for this boardwalk and for Boy Scout Road. It's
Okay.
part of why that new wayside is up there.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
where the brochures will be distributed. And there's probably that for other places too, but this will be the first one.
Yeah, that's right. I'm supposed to make some input on the historical side of that. Okay. How old is this area? And not geologically, but I mean, how long has this part was acquired?
It's been a refuge just a little more than 5 years. It was brand new refuge when I started working here. So, as a matter of fact, we didn't really even know what Ozol was here. It was part of. I remember my first few months of work. I came out here in waders and walked where we're standing on a boardwalk right now, and plotted this out with the head biologist.
Now, people who come here to hunt, they're subject to all the normal
State rules and regs, plus some limitations here. Things like no rifle hunting, because you look behind us and see houses. You know, and
Yeah.
it sticks in and along the refuge. So there's bow hunting for deer, and of course duck hunting, and a little bit of small game hunting too.
Is there any room for expansion? I mean, is there other lands that are available?
It's more like filling in than it is expansion. It's sort of just delimited by the railroad track in Slidell and Cane Bayou, but we don't own all the property along the lake in front of that. And there's pieces parks that we didn't get. So most of the land originally was donated. What we're doing now is buying the little pieces to fill out the puzzle, basically.
Okay. What do you see as the main appeal? Say, for instance, you're from Pennsylvania. I mean, you probably did not know too much about this area until you got here. But if you were to go back to Pennsylvania and sell it, say, for tourism, what would you say would be the biggest appeal in this type
Well, it
of
matters who you're appealing to, you know, but one of the things that surprised me the most is the diversity in here on this little strip of land. You'll find oak trees. Frogs, huh?
Mm-hmm.
The heck, it's cold, man, for frogs. You know, the diversity is finding piney woods with sawgrass in the middle of it, which is one of the odder things I've ever seen. To find the different kinds of wetlands all stuck in an area where there's, on this road, there's cypress swamp, gum swamp, marsh of 2 or 3 varieties, and piney woods, which is, you know, a pretty tight concentration for that kind of variety.
And oak cheniers too.
Right, right.
You got that. As a matter of fact, I want to ask you about these trees that are dying or dead because of inundation of the water. This is not salt. This is a freshwater marsh.
Well, I would say no. I would say it's brackish.
Brackish it would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
This year especially, I think traditionally it's mostly salt. But with
But
a lack of rain this year, it's been.
But to me, I know Bayou Sauvage is down, the water level's
Right.
down, but this doesn't look as if it's lost any water.
It's tidal.
Because, okay, well, what the trees have been killed, and I see a little live oak, couple of live oaks there that have died. Is that because the water level has risen or it sunk down some?
Good question. I don't know the answer.
Okay.
And neither do people I've asked.
Uh-huh.
So kind of poking around trying to find out. Because all of those were long dead before we got here.
Yeah.
But likely subsidence, although the North Shore doesn't subside like the South Shore, so I don't really know.
Okay, well,
I'll find out.
it's just sort of a little area, but nevertheless, it piques my interest because I know a lot of harm was done here at the end of the Reconstruction, during Reconstruction, and that period up until the 1920s. When they first came and clear-cut the cypress. Then they came and started clear-cutting the long needle pine, the yellow pine. And of course, as you know, naturally, most of this here is slash and loblolly. But, you know, I'm just curious as to the dynamics of the situation. So you all are still learning.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's, like I said, it's an odd area.
Yeah.
I've talked to folks from a few of the universities around here too, and they seem a little bit in disagreement about what's happened here or will happen.
I'm sorry, by Walter Reed. That's okay.
If you really want
Do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend. The Constitution and laws of the United States. And the Constitution I will faithfully and impartially. Perform and discharge. All of the duties of public office. As counted so. I have the pleasure. The Honorable Chris Candy from District 8.
new council. Welcome to the new parish government. Welcome to the new beginning of St. Tammany, a beginning filled with a vision of what St. Tammany will become over the next 4 years. As your parish president, I promise to keep the spirit of cooperation alive and the hopes and the dreams of all of us for this parish close at hand. This means that we will now look at issues from the bigger picture for St. Tammany instead of individual parts. Urban and rural differences will become collective issues we tackle according to the effect of the entire parish, rather than individual problems in remote areas. We have begun a new course for St. Tammany that will lay the foundation for the future. We have begun the Visions 2025 program, where all of our citizens meet to design tomorrow together and to create an entire parish for the future of St. Tammany. On my end, I will work hard towards improving and enhancing the quality of life we cherish here in St. Tammany. I will work tirelessly to maintain the balance between development and our environment, so that we may keep our green spaces as we know them today. The task of uniting St. Tammany is monumental. I am sure it will be at times overwhelming. Therefore, it is incumbent upon us to ensure that the decisions made for the future and for the planned growth of St. Tammany be a collective effort of government and citizens of St. Tammany Parish, so that we dissolve problems and begin to only deal with issues. The goals that we set now will determine our community of the future. My hope is that St. Tammany will become the envy of everyone, not only because of the green spaces in this parish, but because we will be recognized for doing it right. I thank you for your support of this new government, and I only ask for your patience over the next 4 years as we move with a purpose through our future. Together with this parish council, I stand at the doorway of the new millennium. I would like for all of us to enter that doorway together and to begin working to serve you, the citizens of the greatest parish in the state of Louisiana, to the best of our ability. The parish of St. Tammany is yours. It is mine, but it is ours, all of us. Thank you, and God bless you.
Bran and flaxseed to their diet. The damage done after you produce varicose veins, hemorrhoids, and hiatus hernia won't be repaired with a change in diet. However, symptoms of hemorrhoids are usually alleviated when the constipation is relieved by a healthy diet. Symptoms of hiatus hernia are helped the same way a good diet helps other forms of indigestion. The opposite of constipation is chronic diarrhea, and it can be also traced back to the wrong foods. Sometimes people have chronic diarrhea and find it's relieved by a starch-based diet. It's a wonder how a diet could solve such extremely different problems, diarrhea on the one hand and constipation on the other. The American diet is a common cause of chronic diarrhea. In fact, many people know where every bathroom in town is. They're afraid to take an automobile drive that lasts any more than a half an hour because they never know when distress will hit. And it's due to the way they eat. Back to the basics. Let me repeat what I said before. What you put in your intestinal tract determines its health or disease. Fats and oils in the diet cause excretion of bile acids from the liver. Sometimes these bile acids aren't absorbed completely as they should be in the small intestine. Instead, they end up in the large colon where they cause distressing irritation and watery diarrhea. As soon as you stop the fat intake, the production of bile acids is decreased and the diarrhea stops, usually in a matter of hours. Some people have allergies that will cause diarrhea, like a dairy product allergy. Even wheat and other high gluten grains can cause diarrhea by creating malabsorption. So you may have to search out a little further than just dropping the fat content of the diet. And don't forget, we're talking about vegetable fat as well as animal fat. Diverticulosis is another intestinal problem which could be called a disease of small balloons. It affects more than half of all people over the age of 50 who eat a low-fiber, rich American diet. The small stools produced by a low-fiber diet create high pressures in the colon when it contracts. These pressures blow out small pouches that resemble balloons in the wall of the colon. These diverticuli often bleed and become infected. People with symptoms of diverticular disease can get relief by changing to a high-fiber, starch-based diet. It's amazing. When people change their diet, their intestinal tract from one end to the other responds within hours. And I mean within hours. The stomach stops hurting, the bowels start working, and the patient finds relief. Diabetes is a metabolic disorder in which the body's ability to utilize carbohydrates is more or less lost because of a disturbance of insulin activities. The first sign is often sugar in the urine, and other symptoms include frequent urination, thirst, hunger, loss of weight, and fatigue. As the disease progresses, labored breathing and coma can develop in severe cases. There are two types of diabetes: childhood onset or insulin dependent, and adult onset or insulin non-dependent. The childhood onset diabetic produces very little insulin or none at all. This form of disease may in part be genetic, but new information reported in the New England Journal of Medicine says this disease is due to injury of the pancreas caused by an immune reaction to cow's milk. The adult onset diabetic produces even more insulin than is needed, but lacks the hormone activity that's supposed to control the blood sugar. Most people think the cause of adult onset diabetes is unknown and is related to obesity and is thought to run in families. Currently, the standard treatment for diabetes is to follow an exchange diet that's designed to keep the calorie intake constant. Patients also take insulin or diabetic pills. Insulin, of course, is necessary for the childhood onset type diabetic. The insulin controls one sign of the disease, the elevated sugar level. However, it does not change the course of the illness. Most diabetics suffer blindness, heart attacks, and kidney failure within 17 years after diagnosis, and neither insulin nor drugs seem to do much to change this disastrous outcome. What's worse, taking diabetic pills has been found to increase the risk of dying from heart disease by 2.5 times over the next 5 to 8 years when compared to diabetics who are treated by diet alone. Furthermore, insulin and diabetic pills have serious side effects that include life-threatening episodes of hypoglycemia. They also make most diabetics obese by causing them to store excess calories in their fat cells. That's the downside. But the good news is, both forms of diabetes are practically unknown in parts of the world where meals are starch-based. This is easy to understand in the case of adult-onset diabetes because its primary cause is the rich American diet. Fat inhibits the action of insulin in the body, and the lack of fiber allows rapid absorption of glucose from the gut into the blood. This raises the blood sugar level rapidly. Carbohydrates, on the other hand, stimulate insulin activity and lower the blood sugar levels. The reason childhood diabetes is more common in Western societies is because these are the societies where children are raised on cow's milk. A diabetic person suffering from either form of disease can't protect themselves from the consequences of a rich diet that overwhelms a weakening system. When you consider that a diabetic who develops a small infection in their toe may have to have their foot or leg amputated because of the infection, it's obvious that atherosclerosis can progress much more rapidly in the diabetic than in the general population. In Africa and Asia, the few diabetics who have been found live mostly without atherosclerosis, heart disease, strokes, and gangrene, which are the legacy of diabetics indulging in the unending American feast. The difference is clearly a starch-based diet that's consumed in these underdeveloped countries. When followed, my recommendations to diabetics have been found to effect a cure in many of those with the adult onset form of this disease, and a better life for those who have contracted the condition in childhood. It's important to remember that those people who have childhood onset diabetes will need to continue taking insulin. Without injected insulin, childhood diabetics would likely develop ketoacidosis, which would cause them to slip into coma and die. For them, insulin is a lifesaver, and they'll never be able to do without it. However, on a low-fat, starch-based diet, these patients will usually drop their insulin needs by 30% and their blood sugar levels will become more stable. Any adjustment in medication has to be done with the aid of laboratory tests and under a doctor's supervision. Even more important, on the McDougall program diet, the childhood-onset diabetic's risk of complications is markedly decreased. Adult-onset diabetes is another story entirely. A change in diet will allow 75% of these patients to stop taking all insulin, and the remainder are treated with smaller doses. More than 95% stop taking all diabetic pills. Again, all insulin and diabetic pill adjustments must be made under a physician's supervision. My recommendations to diabetics are to never take diabetic pills because they heighten your chances of dying prematurely of heart disease. Change to a low-fat, high-complex carbohydrate diet. If you're obese, lose weight so you'll have added health and blood sugar control. Also become physically active. Exercise, in addition to helping you lose pounds, has independent benefits that increase the activity of insulin. This will greatly improve your diabetic condition. People with diabetes are usually expert at adjusting their medication, but I urge you to stay in close contact with your doctor. Before an adult-onset diabetic begins this program, they need to talk to their doctor about cutting their dosage of insulin at least in half and stopping altogether their diabetic pills. You'll need to keep your blood sugar between 150 and 350 milligrams per deciliter while you're changing your diet. The higher levels are safer than the lower ones. I've seen adult-type diabetics come off more than 75 units of NPH insulin within 3 days of changing to a starch-based low-fat diet along with some exercise. You should always keep hard candy at hand in case you have a hypoglycemic reaction from taking too much medication. To me, the exciting breakthrough is how much better the lives of diabetics can become by simply changing the way they approach food. Within days, they go from feeling tired to feeling terrific. I haven't attempted to give you an exhaustive discussion of various illnesses that can be helped dramatically by a change in diet. And I encourage you not to make any decisions about your medication or treatment of disease you may have without consulting with medical professionals. One thing that is sure, there is nothing in a low-fat, starch-based diet that can hurt you in any way. It's the way people were meant to eat. It's the food our bodies are best adapted to processing. This isn't to say that vegetarians never ever get sick or die. That would be ridiculous. However, I know from my personal experience and from working with thousands of patients since 1972, you feel better, have more energy, and live more fully when your arteries are clear and your body is functioning at its optimal ability. I'm a doctor who still has a busy private practice, and I'll tell you that the best words I ever hear a patient say are, "Well, doc, I guess I don't have to come and see you anymore. I'm not taking any medication. I feel fine. I'm just not sick anymore."